evening. You are watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. The investment volume in the special economic zones and free zones reached 15.2 billion Omani riyals last year, with a growth rate of 6%. And the Ministry of Labor announces the approval of incentive system for all units linked to Ijada system and announces rewarding last year's outstanding performance. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq sent a cable of condolences to His Excellency President Paul Kagame of the Republic of Rwanda on the victims of the floods that swept his country. Highlighted a 15.2 billion Omani riyals in investment volume by the end of 2022 within all its affiliated zones. The Public Authority for Special Economic Zones and Free Zones, OPAZ, organized its annual media meeting. We have more details in the following report.
The Public Authority for Special Economic Zones and Free Zones, OPAZ, organised its annual media meeting in the presence of His Excellency Dr. Ali bin Masoud al-Snedi, Chairman of OPAZ, CEOs of the Special Economic Zones and Free Zones in the Sultanate of Oman, other officials and media representatives.
Today we talked about what we have been achieved in the Public Authority for special economic zones and free zone and the zones that's under supervision of the authority, and we have given the numbers of achievement in terms of investment, in terms of the employees, the number of employees in these zones. Also we have given the numbers of what sort of sectors we are focusing on. Also we give explanation of what will be our future targeting in terms of the special economic zones.
OPAZ demonstrated its plans and strategy in line of Oman Vision 2040 to boost investment opportunities and attract foreign investments in the special, free and economic zones. The annual briefing also highlighted the 21 zones affiliated to OPAZ, including 13 existing zones that are the Special Economic Zone in Duqm, 3 free zones, Suhar, Salala and Al Mazyuna, and other 9 economic zones under the Public Establishment for Industrial Estates, Madayin, while 8 other zones are still under development, 2 of which are economic and 1 is a free zone, in addition to 5 industrial zones in various parts within the Sultanate of Oman.
Our focus is basically to complete the superstructure as well as also to connect Duqm to its potential market. We have 5 road construction recently and going on, and we have also many other projects that we see that will lift Duqm into the regional market. And the rest of, I think, the patterns of multimodal infrastructure is completed, the airport, also the seaport, as well as the main highways. We believe over the next probably a year or two, we should see exactly that we will transform Duqm to become the main gateway of the region.
We are able to achieve a total FDI of 3.8 billion Riyal Omani of investments in the free zone, as well as create jobs, direct jobs for more than 2,460 people, and the Omanization percentage reached 38%. On top of that, we've been able to anchor and host the largest pharmaceutical hub in Oman, where they started production and exporting to GCC market. Also, we've been able to host some Chinese investments as well as food processing investments.
It's noteworthy of mention that the Public Authority for Special Economic Zones and Free Zones OPAZ revealed that the volume of investment in its affiliated zones amounted to 15.2 billion Omani riyals by the end of 2022, with a growth rate of 6%. In addition, the total usufruct agreements signed during the same year reached over 130 agreements, while investment requests exceeded 600 and the number of projects amounted to 3,246 projects in all the zones. The annual meeting of the Public Authority for Special Economic Zones and Free Zones happened today to discuss the most prominent results of 2022 and fast forward to 2023 in terms of achievements and desired outcomes. For Oman TV, Ahmed bin Hilal al-Busaidi, Muscat.
The Sultanate of Oman and the Syrian Arab Republic signed a cooperation program in order to exchange expertise in the field of historical documentation and the management of records and archives. The cooperation program includes organizing programs and training courses for staff. The program was signed by His Excellency Dr. Hamad bin Mohammed al-Dhawyani, Chairman of the National Records and Archives Authority, and from the Syrian side by Her Excellency Dr. Buthayna Sha'ban, Political and Media Advisor at the Syrian Presidency, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of Wathiqat Watan. The Public Authority for Special Economic Zones and Free Zones won the Arab Digital Government Award 2023 in the category Government. Achievements. This win comes in recognition of the authority's continuous commitment to innovation, development, and the use of modern technologies to improve the experiences of investors and beneficiaries of the services provided by OPAZ and its affiliated zones. It also marks an acknowledgement of OPAZ's persistent efforts towards digital transformation through its development of electronic applications aimed at simplifying government procedures and providing fast, safe, and inclusive services to investors. The award was announced at a ceremony held in Dubai. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Labor announced the approval of a system of incentives and gratuities for all departments linked to Ijada system, as well as rewards for outstanding performers who excelled during the year 2022. This was unveiled during a gathering organized today by the Ministry of Labor with undersecretaries of other ministries. During the meeting, emphasis was laid on procedures undertaken by the ministry to upgrade performance in a manner that improves the labor market, addresses its challenges, and provides opportunities for job seekers. The meeting was also outlined electronic services endorsed by the ministry to facilitate direct communication among individuals and institutions. His Excellency Sayyid Salim bin Musallam al-Busaidi, Undersecretary of the Ministry of Labor for Human Resources Development, gave a visual presentation on training programs and the initiatives of the ministry. The presentation explains challenges facing the ministry in its drive to achieve goals and objectives set for national future action. During the gathering, Ijada Platform for Human Resources Development was launched. The platform will serve as meeting place for national workforces. The Ministry of Transport, Communication and Information Technology announced a bidding for local companies and investors to develop and manage parking yards for vehicles in various governorates. This step comes within the ministry's keenness to regulate land transportation facilities and to provide safe and equipped parking spaces in order to stop trucks from parking in residential neighborhoods. The decision will be obligatory and will apply to all means of land transportation. These parking spaces will be located outside ports, industrial areas, and free zones, and will not only provide temporary accommodation for vehicles, but also provide maintenance services. The Royal Hospital is exerting extensive efforts to cut down waiting lists for patients who need surgeries and x-rays. The hospital operated a room for surgical operations during the evening period and 4 rooms during the weekend, in addition to providing the necessary logistic requirements and health cadres. In the year 2022, those efforts enabled the hospital to conduct about 850 surgeries during the evening and weekends. And this has contributed significantly to reducing the number of patients on waiting lists. Continuous coordination was also made with the private institutions to provide the Royal Hospital with various types of devices that serve the patients in need, and 20 new apparatus were installed at the obstetrics and gynecology department in the hospital. Electricity production in the Sultanate of Oman increased until the end of last February by 4.1% to reach more than 4,600 gigawatt compared to the same period last year. The governments of Al-Dhahira, South and North Al-Batina recorded an increase in total electricity production by 17.2%, while it decreased in the government of Muscat by around 95.5%. The largest amount of electricity production came in the governorates of Al-Dhahira, South and North Al-Batina, with the increase of 17%. The total amount of water produced in the Sultanate of Oman increased by 2% to reach more than 79,127,000 cubic meters until the end of last February, and the water production of the Dhofar Governorate recorded an increase to 5%, followed by the Governorate of Muscat with a rise of 3%. Still to come on News Bulletin. 25,000 flee out of control wildfires in Western Canada. Plumes of smoke rose over Khartoum today as envoys from Sudan's warring parties were in Saudi Arabia for talks that international mediators hope will bring an end to a 3-week-old conflict that has killed hundreds and triggered an exodus. The U.S.-Saudi initiative is first serious attempt to end the fighting between the army and the rapid support forces that has turned parts of the Sudanese capital Khartoum into war zones. Battles since mid-April have killed hundreds of people and wounded thousands of others, disrupted aid supplies, and sent 100,000 refugees fleeing abroad. Mediators are seeking a path to peace. Both sides made it clear it would discuss a humanitarian truce and not negotiate an end to the war. The conflict started on April 15th following the collapse of the internationally backed plan for a transition to democracy. South Korean experts will visit Japan's Fukushima nuclear power plant to inspect treated but still radioactive wastewater planned to be released into the sea. During a visit to Seoul today, the Japanese Prime Minister said he and the South Korean president discussed the issue. A massive earthquake and tsunami in 2011 destroyed the Fukushima plant's cooling systems, causing 3 reactors to melt and release large amounts of radiation. The water used to cool the damaged reactor cores, which remain highly radioactive, has since leaked into the basement of the reactor buildings and has been collected, treated, and stored in tanks. Plans to release the water, which were set to take place later this year, have been opposed by Japan's neighbors, including China and South Korea, as well as fishermen and local residents. The Japanese Prime Minister arrived in South Korea earlier today for a 2-day visit, which reciprocates a mid-March trip to Tokyo by the South Korean president. It was the first exchange of visits between the leaders of the Asian neighbors in 12 years. Alberta announced a state of emergency as wildfires flared across the Canadian province, forcing 25,000 people to flee their homes in a top officials said was an unprecedented crisis. Thousands more have been told to be prepared to leave on a moment's notice as the number of fires fanned by the strong winds jumped to 110. One-third of the blazes were listed as out of control. More than 20 communities have been evacuated and at least 122,000 acres have burned so far. In the recent years, Western Canada has been hit repeatedly by extreme weather, the intensity and the frequency of which have increased due to global warming. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's news bulletin, here are the main points once again. The investment volume in special economic zones and free zones reached 15.2 billion Omani Riyals last year, with a growth rate of 6%. And the Ministry of Labor announces the approval of incentive system for all units linked to Ijada system and announces rewarding last year's outstanding performers. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin from all of us here at the newsroom and the studios. Thank you for watching and have a good night.